My best two videos were about if George McClellan and Douglas MacArthur were bad generals or not. Both videos got a lot of traction with a lot of back and forth in regards to both men. So, we're going to compare as I think both men had something in common in terms of their personalities. George McClellan had the nickname of Young Napoleon and was said to be the best American general in the Civil War. But during the Peninsula Campaign, he just refused to fight at times. He also lied and exaggerated about how many troops the Confederacy had, just as an excuse not to fight. At the Battle of Antietam, McClellan's troops outnumbered Confederate troops by double. McClellan then received the actual battle plans and movements from General Robert E. Lee when Lee issued his battle plans and had it distributed to his officers. One general carelessly wrapped his copy around several cigars, which he later lost. Just before the battle, a Union soldier discovered the cigars, gave the plans to McClellan, and he still lost. I don't think any general in history has had double the men and been given the enemy's plans and still didn't win. No one exaggerated how many troops the enemy had, quite like George McClellan. In September 1861, McClellan proposed that the Confederate force at Manassas probably totaled 170,000 men, when, in truth, the rebels could hardly have mustered more than 45,000. At various times during his Peninsula Campaign, he credited the enemy with anywhere from 120,000 to 200,000 men. Finally, during the Antietam Campaign, he claimed having good reason for believing that Lee's invasion force consisted of more than 120,000 men or more. That number was more like 40,000. He inflated the numbers on an average of 225%. McClellan was trying to cover for himself and his ego if he ever fought and lost. He could go on asking for more troops and refusing to fight forever, as what he wanted was never enough. Historian Richard Schreiner wrote, McClellan possessed two crippling vices that would doom him to failure as a general. First, his bravado was nothing more than a brittle veneer to conceal a major weakness of will. When the bloodshed started and the casualties rose, this military man would prove weak to the point of timidity. Second, when he lost a battle, he would blame it on his superiors. Ironically, his victories in Western Virginia that summer had been won to some extent by the skill of his subordinates. Of the people he hated, disparaged, and blamed, President Lincoln was first on that list. He wrote to his wife that President Lincoln was nothing more than a well-meaning baboon. Lincoln would go to McClellan's headquarters to speak about the war, and McClellan purposely made Lincoln wait for hours just to see him. The arrogance and disrespect McClellan showed Lincoln, and the grace in which Lincoln showed, clearly shows why the better man is memorialized. Now on to MacArthur. He is a very polarizing figure with passions on both sides of the argument. During World War I, he led raids on German trenches and helped organize resistance to enemy assaults. He gained a reputation as a fearless leader and regularly exposed himself to danger. He was nominated for the Medal of Honor and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross twice and the Silver Star 7 times. There was no doubt that MacArthur was a brave soldier. This question is just concerning his service in World War II. He was the leader of the Philippines, in which they were lost, resulting in the Bataan Death March, which goes without saying as some of the worst conditions our soldiers had to endure. He then disagreed with the island-hopping strategy that the other generals in the Pacific favored, and this strategy was one of the reasons for defeating the Japanese. If we followed MacArthur's strategy, many more U.S. soldiers would have died attacking heavily fortified Japanese-held islands. He didn't really do much until the Philippines was recaptured, but at the time the Japanese had no naval or air power. The Japanese troops on the ground could not get supplies in. He defeated the Japanese military when they were at their weakest. I get he's an American hero and patriot. He just seemed to have a better PR team than results in World War II. I think McClellan is by far much worse than MacArthur was in terms of a general and for the country as a whole. Both men, I think, have something to teach us, and the lesson is similar. Both men cared so deeply about their image. McClellan needed to be seen as the best and the smartest. He refused to accept that he was the reason for a lack of success. McClellan, after being fired, even tried to take Lincoln's job and ran against him in the presidential election as a Democrat. MacArthur's image was so hurt by having to abandon the Philippines that he thought of almost nothing else for several of the most important years of the war, when the most important objective was defeating the Japanese. MacArthur wanted that picture of him jumping off that boat and walking on shore of the Philippines again. People want to follow a leader who has the big picture in mind, someone who could set aside their egos and personal wants for the greater good.